Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Presence Posse Presents. It is the 24th of October for many of us, I would imagine most of us, and I'm Miriam Siegel here with Dr. Fred Blum and Bobby Cobb. We are going to be talking today about presence and perfectionism. And because I'm not perfect, I know absolutely nothing about it.
Those of us who are perfect can begin this conversation.
Yes, this conversation will not be perfect. Pretty soon, Fred's going to be turning upside down and putting away. Actually, funnily enough, at the beginning of this talk, just before we came on, Fred was having, yeah,
wow, nice. I want to learn that trick.
That's really cool. We actually had sound difficulties, so it's it's not going to be perfect. Maybe, but we'll see. But does it have to be? Would you gentlemen like to say something about yourselves before we get started? Not the topic, but your actual selves and what you do.
I want Bobby to go first because I know he'll set the standard of perfection that we can all follow.
Dang. Okay, go for it, Bobby.
I'm Bobby Cobb. I am a liberation hypnotist. I help people remove the blocks and debilitating mindset and worn out mental models that keep us stuck in this game called life. And I'm going to be starting actually, I'll save that for the end. That's that, and the information that Miriam has
Foreshadowing
below is all you need to know about me for the time being. Glad to be here.
Fred, we're glad to have you, Bobby.
Yeah. I see by the banner on the bottom that it's my turn. Dr. Fred Blum, going by various titles, performance coach, self-inquiry coach, and some things that I'd rather not repeat.
Well, now I got really curious.
Yeah, well, we'll talk offline. And I work with individuals that I call high performers and overachievers, people who have essentially outsourced their happiness to their accomplishments. And that seems to not work in life as well as we're trained to think it should work. So I help them kind of turn the camera around back, in the direction that they should be looking for happiness, which is within. And it's a fun process, and it's not one that denies achievement. In fact, I think that we are more powerful and more effective when we operate from our true self as opposed to when we operate from our ego. Perhaps that will come up in the conversation today.
Mm-hmm.
I suspect it might.
Especially since you think there's a self.
All right. I love how we all laugh at that. Like, that's hilarious.
Okay, I can say a couple of things about myself too, I think. One of them is the website and the email that you're seeing at the bottom of the screen, or that you should be seeing at the bottom of the screen, is going to be changed quite soon. My name is Miriam Siegel, and I run the Miriam Siegel Academy, as well as the Center for Mastery and Excellence. I am a trained psychotherapist. I've been a psychotherapist and a coach and a lot of other things for a long time. And I teach other therapists and coaches and advisors, etc., how to help their clients get through to where they want to be more quickly. And I work with highly skilled or skilled practitioners who want to be even more highly skilled. So coming soon to a theater near you.
Can't wait.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's the first time I've heard that title.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is. You're everybody got your benefits. Now you're the first ones to know. Now it's out there. Now it has to be real. Just kidding. And it won't be perfect. I'm not aiming at perfection. Oh no! But on to perfectionism. We're off to a good start already.
We are. I could not agree more.
Okay. I sat in a meeting one time, and my colleague started calling me princess.
Oh,
And I actually was not happy about that, them calling me princess, until I looked at it like they're actually trying to help me. They're trying to tell me something. They're not necessarily doing it in a nice way, but if they had done it in a nice way, I might not have listened. So they were calling me princess because they felt like I was being too much of a perfectionist. They needed some leeway, and I was being too strict. And too, what would we say, too focused on the rules. So I actually learned from that. This is a long time ago. This is like 30 years ago. And noticed what that was about. And it wasn't just in the meeting, it was in several areas of my life. And I made some changes because perfectionism was actually keeping me exhausted and angry and sad. And oh my goodness, what just happened to Fred? Breathe. Are you trying to tell me something?
yeah, maybe so.
Bobby, if you get your Palo stones behind you as well, then I'm going to feel really left out because I don't have one of those.
Well, here I can do something even different. I can show you my heart. It's Alaska.
It's hard to see. We actually are just seeing your background on your chest.
I know, which is
Oh,
Alaska.
that is what
in
you're
the
showing.
background. My shirt happens to match my green screen.
Oh, I love it.
So little did I know when I was putting this outfit on, I was going to be decapitating myself.
That's cool, though.
That's very cool. This is going perfectly as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
I love that. I love that new discovery. I'm going to have to go out and buy a green shirt. Well, I thought I would just start off like that. That people actually, it was actually perfect. That situation was actually perfect, them calling me princess, because it got my attention. It wasn't comfortable, but I knew they meant well somehow. They were doing it to tell me something so that I could make positive changes in my life, because the whole idea of having to be perfect was actually taking a toll on not only on me, but everybody around me. So I am always grateful to them for that. Always having to be perfect, having done things right, to be best, to be liked, that kind of thing. Why? Why? Why do so many of us have that particular, should I call it a need? Strategy? I like to call it strategy. And Fred, I know you have an answer for that.
Well, I don't think there's an answer to it.
No.
Well, I mean, I think, I mean, anyone who's ever watched any of these podcasts that I've been on, I talk about the distinction between ego and true self a lot, as we really all do in our own way. And so I would say that perfectionism is really an egoic pattern, essentially failing to recognize the intrinsic perfection already present, that like it's already here, like this is it. And the why question, of course, why is always, as far as I'm concerned, why questions are pretty much always above my pay grade. But on a sort of this human level, I would say that perfectionism, or you said some great stuff about, needing to be liked or be loved or be worthy and all that kind of stuff. It's just an ego's, first of all, understanding that the ego's very nature is fundamentally insecure, that isn't something that ever will really change. It can be functional. I mean, we can have egos that can learn how to say please and thank you and can function in society. But I don't think the ego can be made to be secure, because it was created out of fear and insecurity when we were like 2 years old. So it attempts to find its security in all these various strategies, like Miriam was saying. So perfectionism is a strategy that an ego may choose in an attempt to somehow prove its worthiness in the world. It's a failing strategy, but they're all failing strategies, so it doesn't really matter which one you choose. If you ever study, various personality models, I happen to like the Enneagram, which is a 9 personality model, interesting diagram. The type 1 is the perfectionist, and the type 1, this is what it's all about. Other types have different strategies, but perfectionism is one of the options that the ego can choose to try and prove itself in the world.
Very interesting. What do you think, Bobby?
Well, I think perfection or perfectionism, perfect or perfectionism, might rival God in the mental associations, the strong mental associations have when that word is brought into the conversation. And actually, can I do just a quick little interesting exercise?
Please.
I think you can.
So, just as a question, I'm going to ask you guys to just rate how you're feeling right now on a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being perfection, 1 being an absolute train wreck. Where are you feeling today?
Can I just be a dick about the question?
Yeah.
For a second? Not really, because I can answer your question, but here's what occurred to me, and then we'll go back to what you're saying. The idea of perfection is perfection. I can't really, it's hard for me to conceive it as a destination, like a thing. So therefore, perfection is an infinite scale. So how do I scale it's like on a scale of 1 to infinity, where are you now? Well, wherever I am, it doesn't really matter. I could be at 1 or I could be at 1 billion, and I'm still really not any closer. But maybe that's just me being a dick, so I apologize.
Well, no, that's actually, that's in a way, which I'll get to in a second, is the point. But where would you say? So 1 is a train wreck, 10 is perfection. Where are you?
You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to say 8, because I like to leave room for improvement. I had a chiropractic professor many years ago. Somebody would ask him, he was very Southern, and somebody say, "How you doing, Dr. Sidney?" He'd say, "Near perfect." Because he'd say, because when you're ripe, he would say, that's when you begin to rot.
I like it. I like it. How about you, Miriam? How would you answer that?
I'm going to do it in the spirit of expressive arts therapy. We have something called a barometer, and we take a barometer of different things. For example, our psychological well-being, our physical well-being, it can be our spiritual well-being. So I'm going to do psychological well-being, and I'd put myself up at I'd say about an 8. I also have room for improvement. Maybe a 9, actually. But my physical well-being, I managed to eat something just before this talk that is not agreeing with me. So I would put myself down at about 5 on the physical.
Okay.
Stop arguing with your food, Miriam.
Beg pardon?
Stop arguing with your food.
Well, I teach that to financial advisors as a way to open up a conversation with a new prospect. And it plays on exactly what you brought up when you were being dickish, Fred, is that we are conditioned to believe that perfection is not something that we have the right to expect, at least not in this lifetime. So in answering that and doing the subtle little other than conscious communication trick of saying 1 is a train wreck, 10 is perfection, how do you feel? And you may notice that I'm sticking my hand right around 7 or 8. And that's to guide. So then the second part of the question is, if we were to begin to work together, what would have to unfold for you to feel like you're moving toward a 10? And it's a very subtle way of bringing up the things, and it's gearing the client's mind, which our mind, I think, is naturally geared in some cases, and I guess on the Enneagram, certainly the ones, we're geared to measure against an ideal of perfection. And man, Fred hit the nail, I think, straight on the head. That's a game the ego loves to play because it keeps it having a job.
Yes.
Particularly if we buy into the belief that things aren't perfect yet and go through the thought process that you went through, Miriam, that, you know, the idea that they were saying, oh, you're a perfectionist was repellent to you. But then as you went through the process of going through things, you realize that that interaction in its own way was perfect. And it was exactly what could have happened and should have happened for you to have that insight that you have. So I think it's interesting. That's a word that if somebody were to bring it up in a coaching context, I would be very curious as to how they defined perfect or perfection or perfectionism, because man, that word, I think that word in God may be people have very firm ideas around that, and they're not initially, at least, open to a lot of wiggle room.
That's excellent. I would actually like to ask people who are watching, our viewers, what they where would you rate yourself? Now, Bobby's explained 1 being a train wreck and 10 being perfection. Where do you put yourself on that scale? And please write it in the comments, or if you feel like it anyway, and let us know. And even let us know, what do you think about perfection? What does it mean to you? And maybe how has it manifested itself in your life if you have some sort of perfectionism or experience with someone who has that kind of strategy. I sometimes work with people who have OCD, and I would consider that a form of perfectionism, in the way that, you know, I have to check the door handle 5 times before I leave home to know that the door is actually locked. For example, I have to wash my hands 10 times before I can do anything else, because that's the perfect number of times and I'm safe. Or then, yeah, it's usually about safety. Some ritual has to be performed a certain number of times before anything else can happen.
Yeah, control.
Yeah. And I mean, it was funny while you were talking about ego, Fred. I was sitting and sort of just being and noticing that, where did my ego go? Like, I don't have a lot of quarrel with my ego compared to several years ago when I did. And this idea of presence and perfectionism. Presence is like, it demolishes perfectionism, really, because perfectionism it's such a safety measure. I have to be perfect in order to survive, which is an ego strategy. I would agree with you. But presence is just being in this space. There's no need for any of that. There's no need really at all. There's just space and eternity, eternal time. And I would imagine that people who have great difficulties connected to perfectionism would really have a hard time with presence initially, being in that space, because it is so opposite to what they think they need and how they are in the world. Do you guys, that make sense to any of you and the people watching? Yeah.
I'm just reminded as you're speaking about this wonderful man. His name is Father Gregory Boyle. I'm pretty sure that's correct, and he's a Jesuit priest, I think, in South Central LA, like the heart of real bad gang kind of activity. And he's had a ministry there for about 30 or more years that is called Homeboy Industries. And I mean, it's a one. So he's written, I think, 3 books. The one I actually listened to it, which is really nice because he reads it himself, is called The Whole Language. Should anyone be interested in exploring this further. But the essence of this man is that he looks at these, 17, 18-year-old gangbangers, and he just sees perfection. He sees that they are ultimately no different than him. Like he treats them the same as he treats the heads of state that he meets with. And it's not uncommon for some street tough guy, or whatever, to just fall into tears, in his presence, because no one has ever, seen them or treated them in this way. And it's just something so extraordinary about seeing perfection in another human being. He looks at them, and he has rules. I mean, you can't be like actively using drugs when you can, all that kind of stuff. But even those individuals who maybe really, screw up that way, it doesn't change what he sees, and there's something, because we're talking about, there's this idea of perfection in this world, which is pretty much unapproachable. And, I mean, you could say, oh, that ice cream sundae was perfect. And that's okay. Like you declare it as perfect in that moment. It's not like it reached some objective standard. You just declare it. But then there is the just seeing of as, like God's creation, however you conceptualize it, as perfect. As this human being, he may be causing a lot of chaos in the world, but we see deeper than that. We see to the part of him that is perfect and innocent, and and again, for whoever's listening that might trigger, that does not give this individual a pass. It doesn't mean it's okay that you went out and robbed somebody or sold drugs or whatever. It just means that Father Boyle is able to see something beyond that. And when we talk about perfectionism, I just think that has to be part of the conversation.
Yeah, it's like there's the pursuit of perfection, or the pursuit of excellence, but you can also, my guess is that Father Boyle probably also has a very strong belief that life is divinely guided, and assuming that it is divinely guided, then this moment, as effed up as it might look to us through our limited myopia, if we have the belief maybe that as a human interacting in this plane, the Bobby character is not perfect, but the moment is, one of the things that might serve to do is just give you a cause for a pause to kind of interrupt the pattern and just ask, what am I missing here? What if this moment is perfect? I'm assuming that you were interested in adopting that belief. It causes you to go, all right, well, then why am I so pissed off? What am I missing here that's causing me to do that? I don't know, 2 different ways of relating with that word, I guess, would be a nice way to say something. How does that sound? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. You just had me sort of thinking about, I tend to tell people that we're already perfect. I mean, if we're created the way we're created, if we were meant to be created in a different way, then we would have been created in a different way. We are perfectly human. And if I'm already perfect, it doesn't, if I'm already perfect, why? It takes any kind of judgment about myself away, because I don't have anywhere else that I have to go.
Right.
I don't have anything I have to do.
Quite
I can
freeing, isn't it?
choose to improve things and change things and experience things and all of that. And that's part of life. But there's nothing wrong with me. And I love that idea of, especially facing someone with that sort of challenge with perfectionism. What if there's nothing wrong with you at all? And for those of you watching, just consider that even. Ask yourself that question. What if there's nothing wrong with me? And notice what that feels like. What if there's nothing wrong? And what are you left with? What happens?
Indeed. What are you
A
left
lot.
with?
Yeah, so I love that comment, Rosalie's comment. And there is I guess it's a philosophy. It's referred to as an aesthetic, which I'm not exactly sure of the definition of that word, but it's a Japanese aesthetic called wabi sabi.
Mm-hmm.
And wabi sabi is the realization of exactly what Rosalie's talking about, that the imperfections, and it's typically in, I think, used in art, and like a piece of pottery that maybe is broken, they might repair that and fill it with a little bit of gold. And where there was once a crack, now there's a little vein of gold running
I think it's
through
called
the.
raku, RAKU. Is that correct?
That's a different kind of
What
the
is?
way of baking the ceramics.
Okay.
It's not the same as this at what Bobby's talking. I
Yeah,
know someone who does ceramics, so that's why.
yeah. Wabi sabi is just the that is the appreciation that it is the uniqueness. You could have it with a tree as well. You know, if you're out walking in the woods, and in all likelihood, all of the oak trees are growing exactly the same, but then there might be one that got blown over one day and its roots came out, but it's still growing, and it's growing 20 feet along the ground, and then all of a sudden a limb goes up
Yeah.
and it continues to grow. And that's the tree that's going to fascinate everybody, the one that is unique, a unique expression of life and the love of living. And you know, it's the one that captures our attention. It's that imperfect perfection.
Mhm. I'm going to jump in here actually and thank you for those beautiful pictures. When I'm looking at perfection or trying to be perfect, when somebody's trying to be perfect, whose idea of perfect? Who decides what's
Yeah.
perfect? What's the goal you're trying to reach? If you have to not make any mistakes, what are the mistakes? Who decided what the mistakes were? Who decided what no mistakes looks like? And my experience is that pretty much everybody has their own idea of what perfect is, what is appropriate, et cetera, et cetera. And one person will say one thing, another person will say another thing. And then how do I know how to be perfect? I have to be perfect like that for that person, and perfect like that for that person, and perfect like that for that. I can drive myself insane. And
Yeah.
then what is my idea of perfect? If perfect is just me not feeling wrong, me not feeling shame, me not feeling anything out of sorts, then, well, that should be easy to fix. If I'm going to fix anything, small adjustments, and I'm going to be fine. But I think perfectionism can be self-torture because it's impossible to know what I like, Fred, you were saying in the beginning, there's just, it's, infinite numbers of perfection and variations of perfection. And even wabi sabi, I looked it up, it is called wabi sabi. And I mean, a bowl can break in so many ways, and how to put it together, and how much gold and how little gold, and what makes it perfect. If that bowl has a little bit more gold and has fewer broken pieces when put it together, does that make that bowl more perfect than the other bowl? And sometimes I actually went through a period where I was quite overweight. For me, I went up like 20 kilos. That's like a lot, because I'm used to being quite small. And one of the things I would say to myself was, some people love soft bodies. Some people think soft bodies, like overweight bodies, are sexy. It's not just the ideal of the really skinny, perfect bodies that we're sort of told to think that we're supposed to have. There are a lot of models and people who are beautiful or considered beautiful by many when they're not thin. So what do you do with that? There are so many perfections and imperfections.
There are so many perfections.
Yeah.
Well, if that's really true, if there are, as you say, so many perfections, then there would have to be infinite perfections.
Yeah.
Right?
Aren't we all perfect then?
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm going. Like if your definition of perfection is different than mine, well, then there's obviously infinite number of perfections. So if there's infinite perfections, then I think the math pretty much proves that this must be perfect right now.
Mm.
And no matter what's happening, it must be perfect.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's presence.
That's presence.
What
exactly.
is.
Yeah.
I can fight it if I want to. I can agree with it if I want to, whatever I do with it.
Yeah.
But if I don't do, just am. What is.
And that's what Byron Katie calls an argument with reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have
And
a
they
friend
should-
who said, don't fight the rain.
And doesn't
Right,
she said it's
exactly.
okay to argue with reality as long as you realize you'll lose 100%
He
of
says
the
when you
time.
argue with reality, you lose,
Yeah.
but only 100% of the time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So bringing presence into it, as we do, being the presence posse, how do we get to, I was going to say real perfection, like being with real perfection, but it's the wrong word. Or real perfection. What would you call it? I mean, well, perfection, I guess, because perfection is what is. I guess it doesn't have to be called a real perfection. How do we help people practice being perfect?
Well, I have a couple of ideas on that. One is, in grammar, there is a tense called like future perfect tense, and that is merely referring, or past perfect. It's merely, I guess there may also be a present perfect, I don't know, but it is merely saying things in such a way that the listener applies that the activity has been completed. So if we were to take that definition of the word, we could say that each and every moment is perfect because of the infinite possibilities. I mean, in every moment of now, as we stand on the precipice of a future moment, we're looking at the field of all possibilities, that anything next could unfold, one thing will. And that one thing that does unfold next is the perfect thing, because everything leading up to this moment had to align exactly right in order for it to happen, for it to have been, for this moment to have been perfected. So I'm just kind of working this out as I'm talking, but I'm wondering if we look at the perfection of being life as it's unfolding, or this present moment, as opposed to egoically attempting to build ourselves, and in doing so taking ourselves out of the moment, because if the moment is perfect, how we're showing up in the moment right now therefore also must be perfect. So I don't know that we need to use another word. Everybody's redefining words now, at least in the US, where we're defining what words used to mean, and we're saying, no, it doesn't mean this, it means this. And maybe just like getting a better definition of perfection, or I often refer to it as the divine unfolding of life, and that creeps some people out too, because that feels like I'm bringing God into every conversation, which in a way I am.
And why not?
Yeah, and why not?
And actually, this is an interesting point, bringing God into everything, and some people being creeped out, or talking about the divine and some people being creeped out. All of that is perfect. It is what it is. And like my experience with being called princess, it's information that can help me somehow, can bring me more in contact with myself. Why am I reacting to the divine? Why am I reacting to God? What's going on with me that I'm resisting that? What's my need to resist about? And so that moment and that reaction and those thoughts are perfect.
Yeah.
It's all perfect. It's almost like every moment leads me to me. In the sense, every moment leads me to the space, the awareness, the being.
It's just letting go.
Not
It's
in
like,
the sense of mic drop, letting go.
yeah, right. Uh, it's the cosmic mic drop, isn't it?
Very good.
It's the idea, which is very hard to accept. I mean, it's hard for me too, that we are not so much living as we are being lived.
Hmm.
Like call it God or life or nature, but something is living through this form, and there's just an arising. My thoughts arise. I don't choose the thoughts that pop into my head. Ooh, some weird comments just showed up on the thing there.
Wow. Our
And
first
they
hack.
are perfect.
We've made the big time, folks.
I'm
They're
not
being
posting the
Podcast has been
comments.
hacked.
It's kind of like we're being, what do you call it? Bombed. Yeah.
hacked.
We're going to ignore them.
Although they obviously are perfect.
They obviously are.
But yeah, the idea that like everything is just arising. So I don't choose my thoughts. People that say that don't, look, at one level I could say right now I'm going to think of a blue elephant. Okay, there it is. But the idea to think of a blue elephant just showed up in my head. So, it's this, there's a certain utility in believing that I'm in charge as I live my life, so that I sort of do things in a way that promote a life that I want to have. But at the same time, if even a little bit of me can begin to consider the possibility that life is just living through me, I say it all the time, God looking out through 8 billion pairs of eyes. So it doesn't require that I do anything. That this is the sort of take your hands off the wheel and let God drive sort of philosophy, um,
God
which
forbid.
I don't recommend taking your hands off the wheel. Exactly, because God forbid, because because there's sort of this is the in the world but not of the world thing that I like to talk about too. So in the world we have stuff like the laws of physics, and if I go into a restaurant and I order my steak rare and it comes back like a lump of charcoal, I don't have to say, well, that's perfect. I am allowed I'm allowed to return the steak.
Yes,
You
it
know?
doesn't mean you have to accept everything and,
Exactly.
yeah. I mean,
Exactly.
accept everything as it is what it is.
It is what it is.
It
Yeah.
is that it
Right.
is, but it doesn't mean I have to take it all in and live with it. I mean, we're not purporting staying with abusive partners, to being
Hmm.
irresponsible. That's not what we're talking about with the
We're not.
moment being perfect. And it's really actually good that you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like Byron Katie talks about, her purse being stolen or she left it in a restaurant or something. And I mean, this is her. You don't have to agree with this or not. But she says, because she just accepts, okay, this is now reality. Um, so she says, I got so excited about someone having this beautiful new purse and, blah, blah, blah. And she says, and that doesn't mean I didn't cancel my credit cards,
Mm.
you know? So
It
you
also
can,
doesn't mean that you have to react like Byron Katie.
it doesn't
You
mean that.
got
That's why I said,
excited, and other people might feel angry or frightened or whatever you feel. Again, that's all perfect. It is what it is. I went through a period of to compare. I used to be terrified of taking exams. And then I sort of looked at that again. All of those moments are perfect. I'm terrified to take exams, the perfectionist thing, and looked at what that was about. So my fear is telling me something, and I could examine that. And then I became a person who was looking forward to exams. I was so looking forward to what kind of questions am I going to get and how am I going to be able to answer them? This is going to be really cool. And my classmates thought I was nuts because I was looking forward to exams.
but did they think you were nuts when you were having all the anxiety about exams?
Well, they thought, and that's an excellent question too, I might add, because people think it's normal to be
Right.
afraid and
Exactly.
worried about exams. And it's like, well, I can't know more than I know. So there's no point in worrying about it. I either know it or I don't know it. And then it's like, okay, what do I get? This is a chance for me to actually test how much I remember, how well I can explain myself, and then see myself evaluated by other people who are more expert in the field than I am. And whatever. I always thought I just got really I thought it was really cool to have exams. But it was a good question, Fred, because yeah, most people I would venture to say think it's normal to be concerned about exams.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
something to be, it's, trepidation. I'm going to have an exam. And what if I fail? And what if, and that's another aspect of perfectionism as well. What if I don't do well? Because I have to do well. Because if I don't do well, I'm nobody. But if I do well, then I'm somebody. And then I'm okay in the world. And that would mean basically that anybody with bad marks basically tanked in life. But there are a lot of successful people that don't even have a degree, or did very poorly in school, but did really well in business. So go figure. Things aren't always what they seem, and definitely aren't always what we're told to believe that they are or should be.
I think we could change the aren't always in both of those statements. Again, from a practical versus a absolute standpoint, they're never either of those things. Things are never what they seem,
Mhm.
except in
Except when
whatever
they are.
agreed upon. What?
Except when
Except,
they are.
well, except at some level of agreed upon reality that we all agree to, you know? So again, like you're going to live in the world. And so it's best to agree at least in the US, that an 8-sided red sign with the word stop in it means stop.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like I don't get to say, well, in my world, it means go. And, you know,
Well, you could, but it's not going to get you very far.
right. There are consequences to
Yeah.
those decisions.
It's,
You know,
again, what is, and some things we really have to relate to as a sort of a collective. And sometimes, yeah, thinking outside the box and breaking rules, et cetera, is exactly what we need. Y'all following this? Those of you who are watching, let us know if you're confused or if you agree, or neither of those. Anything
yeah.
else you might like to add? Bobby, what
What
do
are
you
your
think about what
opinions?
Fred's
What are
saying?
your thoughts? Sexfind.pro.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, I didn't post those comments, but there are some comments that came up that had a
I
sexual.
guess they'll be on the Facebook page if you want
Right.
to investigate. Although we will delete those comments later.
And
So
actually,
hurry on over.
Right, for a limited time.
Yeah. Let's get a little FOMO involved in our talk of perfection.
and sex.
And
Speaking of
sex.
sex, I mean, since we've already gotten these comments,
Since the
we
universe
may
has
as
put
well
that in
mention
the
sex and perfection. I mean, how many sex lives are derailed because of this idea that you have to have perfect sex, and the
right.
movies where everybody has orgasms simultaneously or multiple or whatever, and it's all
Yeah.
got to be perfect, instead of sex is messy and it doesn't always work and you don't always feel like it, and sometimes you really do and sometimes you agree and sometimes you don't, and there are so many different facets of it, and it is an excellent presence activity.
Yeah.
It is an excellent presence activity.
Can be.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, thanks for that. If
Yeah,
your partners are willing.
there is the perfection that the ego pursues, and the perfection that the true self realizes and relaxes into. And you know, I've often said here that our feelings are not telling us about our circumstances. Rather, they're a guide to how we're doing on the inside, and they can serve as rumble strips on the highway of life to pause and say, hey, what's going on here? Something's wrong. On the highway, it's that you're drifting out of your lane. And maybe in life that's true as well. But if you just realize, are you chasing something that you believe obtaining is going to create this sense of bliss in you? Or are you using it as a tool to say, I'm cranky, I'm upset, to say, what's going on? Why am I feeling this right now? And as Fred likes to say, have a moment of self-inquiry and just dive down deep inside. And in doing that and becoming present again and relaxing into it, that often goes, oh, okay, now I see why this is happening, or now I see why this is occurring, or this is what this means. And it tends to bring us back to the moment, as opposed to projecting us out into the future. You know, 3 weeks from now, when I've closed this wonderful deal and the contracts are all signed and the money's in the bank, then I'm going to be happy.
Mm. You know what? I think this idea of chasing the rainbow, or the prize at the end of the rainbow, is perhaps partly because people no longer remember that each moment is ecstatic. It's like when we were kids, young, and were present, basically all the time. We were constant consciousness. We felt that as it's the way it is. And then we're conditioned to do other things, to experience other things. But the conditioning takes us away from the original ecstasy. So if I'm chasing something to improve my life, or when I get there, things will be great, then I've lost contact with the greatness of the moment itself. And by coming back to the moment, I can experience no need, because I'm already in a perfect moment that is ecstatic. In my experience, when I am in a moment that just is, it's ecstatic, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And why would I want to be anywhere else but right there, right now? Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Of course. Willingness to embrace imperfection, right?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. There's another comment here too. Let me get that up. How we support humans to understand perfection as presence.
Oh,
That's exactly what I was going to do. Ooh, thank you,
Mm.
Danielle.
Yeah, that was somebody's question earlier.
Hmm.
One of us, I mean.
Yeah, I think it was me, actually. I'm going to leave that up there for a second.
Well, I mean, my answer to that would be to keep, I like the process of inquiry. So we keep questioning, inquiring into that which we see as imperfect. It could be anything. I mean, any experience you have, it doesn't, I mean, we're using imperfection because that's what we're talking about. But whatever we see, whatever our experience is, if we look at it deeply enough, we begin to separate ourselves, as in the sense that we begin to see that we are the space, the awareness, the perfect space of peace in which these experiences arise. And even the judgment that arises around these experiences arise in that space of peace. So the more we look, the less we just, it becomes self-evident that we are not that experience. We become disidentified with it. And that just naturally leads us towards the experience of perfection. Just by seeing that, because when we identify with anything, we've already lost ourselves. We've fallen into the 3D world and forgotten who we are, which is probably what they meant by Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden and all that stuff. And it happens to all of us. I mean, it's must be perfect that it happens to all of us, because it seems to happen to all of us.
Mm-hmm. I love that disidentify.
Yeah.
And the identification. It's like taking things personally. It's all about me. That happened because this person wanted to harm me. Or, I mean, there are situations where that actually is the case, but it's not the entire truth. It's not the general source of whatever it is. Being in the moment will reveal that. There's a seed there. It's not necessarily that a person is actually trying to harm you, but the person may have a need to do something, and you are there. Bobby, do you have anything you want to say about that?
No, I'm just kind of sitting with it right now. Actually, I'm enjoying it and just kind of letting it flow in.
I'm going to mention this idea of thoughts arising. Like both of you talking about feelings arising and thoughts arising. And Fred, you had mentioned earlier about not controlling the thoughts that arise. I mean, thoughts arise. In my experience, they just show up.
Right.
It's what I do with them that is the thing. So if I think that I have to be perfect in some way, I have to look a certain way, behave a certain way, communicate in a certain way, function in the world, react in a certain way, all of that sort of demands on myself to be other than, in the understanding of better than what I am. If I engage with those thoughts, believing the thoughts to be true, I'm in trouble. I'm identifying with those thoughts. Or as Bobby, you mentioned feelings. My feelings are telling me what's true. No, my feelings are giving me information, but not necessarily true information. Information. My thoughts give me information, not necessarily true information. Thoughts are thoughts. They are not necessarily truths. And when I can observe them and even just let them float by, feelings pass, thoughts also pass. What is revealed is what is, and it is what it is. I don't have to identify with the thoughts as being me, about me, or any truth about my world. I don't have to. And if you feel like you have to, or you don't really understand what I'm talking about, this is a skill that can be practiced. Letting go of the belief that your thoughts are telling you what is true about you and what is true about the world, or your feelings are telling you what is true about you and true about the world. Go for it, Bobby.
I want to
Make
just,
me wrong.
I'm not wrong. I just want to refine a little something. If we take everything that you just said, but instead say the thoughts are information, it's just information, and take off for now it's not necessarily true information. Just the way it shows up for me, I think more our thoughts are telling us about our feeling. They're giving us information, and then ego and conditioning often assign meaning to that. And that meaning, that assigned meaning, may or may not necessarily be true. And so I think that's the self-inquiry process that Fred's always referring to. And again, using that as a cause for a pause to slow down for a moment and go, is that true? That's what I'm thinking. Is that just conditioning? Or and just the mere act of doing that begins to expand the space inside all of this is occurring. And as it gets bigger, the possibilities increase.
Mm-hmm. I kind of like to think, don't believe everything you tell yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And just because the thought occurs doesn't make it so.
Mm.
And might be. It's worth looking
Yeah.
into.
Might. Well, we are coming to the end of our hour. Always a pleasure with you, gentlemen. Is there anything you would like to say? Bobby, you had something you wanted to share, you said at the end. So I'm going to start with you,
I'm going to be doing a class. It's probably, I don't know exactly when the start date is. I'm tentatively saying the middle of November, whatever that 15th, the Monday around the 15th is. And I have a process that I take people through that helps them make the shift into this type of realization that we're talking about, where the idea that we are spiritual beings having a human experience is not just a pithy bumper sticker. It is your lived reality and your perspective of the world. And I've taken over 150 people through it one-on-one. And the vast majority of the people have had this interesting little shift in perspective that we could label it. I'm not going to label it right now. I'll allow the people to label it once they go through it. In November, what I'm going to be doing is forming a small little kind of R&D team, because I want to begin to scale this and teach it on a much broader, one-to-many as opposed to one-to-one. But I've never done that before. So if you're interested in about a 90-day exploration into the power of presence and being part of a research and development team, because I'm going to be learning as I'm delivering this material how to do it effectively to more than one person at a time, where I get the benefit of the other than conscious communication. You should head on over to my group on Facebook, which is called Our Mindful Life. And that's a group where we talk about this type of stuff all the time. And it's a private community. You'll be asked a couple of questions, but you'll get in. I haven't turned, other than people that I thought were bots, I haven't turned anybody away. And I'm going to be holding these classes in that group. So if you're interested in that, head on over there or shoot me a text message or an email or whatever and ask whatever questions that may have arisen as I did that incomplete description of what I'm going to be doing moving forward. And I'd just like to say, oh, and one other thing, if you don't mind, this is roughly our 70th podcast.
Yay.
We are releasing these to the public. I think I've released about a dozen so far. I'm releasing a couple of them every week. So we're going to have content going out for a long time. But if you like this and you just cannot be here at this time, then go to any of your local podcatchers, Google Play or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of those. And we are there. The Presence Posse presents. And thank you very much for tuning in. And thank you guys for co-creating such an awesome space that I love to begin my weeks with.
Nice.
Thank you very much, Bobby. Over to you, Fred.
I got nothing.
Bob Kiz. I don't believe you.
No, I mean, as far as, stuff coming up or, I got nothing. I'm happily just chugging along without creating anything at the moment. That could change, but at the moment it's, if you're interested in exploring these ideas with me, I have maybe one spot left open for coaching, and I'm happy, to fill that spot with somebody. But other than that, I'm just doing my thing. I don't have a lot else to report. That's perfect, Danielle.
I love it.
And tell us a little bit more about the Miriam Siegel Academy.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I just realized that I do a lot of teaching. When I do psychotherapy or any kind of coaching or anything like that, I just teach and teach and teach. And very often it's therapists coming asking me, how do you do that? How do you do that? And I realized, well, maybe I should start a school. And so I have. And I decided to make it easy and call it the Miriam Siegel Academy, just because I couldn't think of anything else. And so I work with anyone who is already a practitioner in the human services, or who wants to be a practitioner in the human services. And I teach a lot of different things. And one of them is the CEA method, which is something I developed, Conceive, Embody, Achieve. And it's a way of expediting growth, I guess, in clients. So with less pain and more gain and quicker gain. So that's my school. And the Center for Mastery and Excellence, it actually has existed for about 3 years now. It is where practitioners can practice from, including me, because I am a psychotherapist as well. So I do offer therapy in different sorts of ways, all kinds of different therapies. And students who go to the school will also be able to practice from there. So yeah, it's exciting things coming soon to, my world and hopefully yours. And my information here at the bottom of the screen will be updated, but this information is still correct. So if you would like to get in touch with me about anything, if you would like some help or to ask me questions, please contact me at that information there. And that's that. That was perfect.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, gentlemen, very much for a perfect Presence Posse Presents Roundtable Talk. We will be back live and interactive on Zoom next Monday, the 31st of October, because it is Halloween. And our topic will be presents and tricks and treats. And you will have the opportunity to join us live on camera and microphone and tell us what you think and give us your opinions and let other people know as well. Give us a run for our money. So, and you are welcome to come dressed up. It is Halloween after all. So we look forward to seeing you next Monday, same time, same place, except on Zoom. And we hope you enjoy a perfect week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in.